to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
It's a new era in CFB to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoffs.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards. That was protected! But he had that program was already going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish. We have a fun show planned for you today as we turn the page on Week 3 of the National Football League and also start to take ahead and look at Week 4. Thanks for being part of our program today. As always, we have guest contributors from Legal Sports Report. Today we'll talk some Houston Texans football. Have they underachieved through the first couple of weeks of the season? We'll discuss that as well. Also, guest contributors from Sporting News, breaking down everything happening in the NFL and college football today. Bill Bender from Sporting News is in the house, previewing the big game coming up this weekend, and we'll have some great guests, by the way, talking about that big showdown between Alabama and Georgia. But first, let's begin last night and yet another 7-point underdog going on the road and winning outright. It's happened at an incredible clip this season. Last night, it was the Washington Commanders in command, no pun intended, from pretty much start to finish. Jaden Daniels looks like a superstar. The Commanders win 38-33. That 33 was a last minute or so touchdown from Zach Moss. But Daniels has really lived up to the billing of a Heisman Trophy Award winner. You see Jamar Chase there. He threw a couple of touchdowns to him. And maybe the Commanders, as I said yesterday on the show, are indeed one of the big sleepers of the season. Still think that this is one of those teams we got to look out for this year. But everyone talking about the rookie of the year, at least early in the NFL, especially Dan Quinn, his head coach, who really is impressed with his poise through 3 weeks.
Yeah, for sure. He's a really cool customer, and he's got real poise about him. I thought going in, we knew the importance of the ball and, the decision-making for that. We just couldn't give them short fields and chances to go. So his ability to know when to, when not to, when to make a play with his legs, I thought we've seen a lot of this at practice, and now it's carrying over into the games where the decision-making, sliding, going, taking your shot. But I thought it was a really strong performance tonight by him.
On the flip side, the Cincinnati Bengals are now 0-3, and they'll take on the Carolina Panthers this week. Meanwhile, good thing there were 2 Monday Night Football games last night because the first one was over in like 5 minutes. The Buffalo Bills throttled the Jacksonville Jaguars. Final score, 47-10. Josh Allen went bananas in this game as usual, passing touchdowns all over the place, and the Jaguars simply couldn't get out of their own way. Jacksonville is now 0-3 on the season, and the Bills, by the way, with all the questions going into the season about not having Stephon Diggs, doesn't look like they miss him at all. Meanwhile, what's missing in Jacksonville? They started off a season with promise, thinking that they could get off to a good start. Is it time to hit the reboot button? Doug Peterson, the head coach, was asked that.
Well, I don't necessarily think you go in an opposite direction. You've invested a lot of time, but there has to be changes, whether it's play design, personnel, everything's on the table. Let's call it, right? And those are all things that we have to, I have to look at, we have to look at as a staff and make the adjustments.
Yeah. And no indictment, by the way, on any particular player in the NFL, but their right tackle, number 72. How many times did that guy get called for a penalty in last night's game? I was watching that. Stunning to see. A lot of mistakes there. Okay, Pac-12, they're building back up here, folks. They add another team to the Pac-12. They're going to stay alive and try and work this thing out. Utah State is the next team, reportedly yesterday, joining the Pac-12. Also, by the way, 4 teams did decline the Pac-12. Are going to stay in the AAC. Memphis, Tulane, South Florida, and UTSA yesterday saying that they are committed to stay in the American Athletic Conference. Now, the Pac-12 has already announced additions of Boise State, Fresno State, Colorado State, and San Diego State. So now Utah State as well. Gonzaga, there are definitely some different reports going on about Gonzaga. Some say they're going to go. Some say they're not. As of right now, we don't know. But for the time being, we'll leave Gonzaga out of the mix. And also the statement from Memphis, Tulane, USF, and UTSA is while we acknowledge receiving interest in our institutions from other conferences, we believe that this is our individual collective best interest to uphold our commitment to each other. So that's the latest with this conference realignment, which is constantly happening in college sports. Meanwhile, Reggie Bush, the beat goes on. Reggie Bush, who once upon a time had his Heisman Trophy taken away for improprieties, is now asking for money in a lawsuit. Why not, right? Filing it against the Pac-12, seeking compensation for his name, his image, his likeness during his time with the program. I'm sure that he was the single most popular jersey when USC was winning those championships with Pete Carroll. Does anybody remember how good USC was? I saw USC warm up for that right there, that picture right there, warm up for the national championship game, folks, in South Florida, where they were playing, I believe it was Oklahoma for the national championship. They allowed fans to come watch their practice right before a championship game. That's how good USC was. They were unbeatable. I mean, imagine that in this day and age, getting to watch a team in college open practice before a championship. Never happens. Everything's on lockdown now. You get to know nothing. Anyway, bizarre story from the National Football League gets more bizarre. Christian McCaffrey, who was questionable going into week 1 of the National Football League season, has not played a game. He's on injured reserve. There was a social media report the other day saying that they saw him waiting for a flight to go to Munich, Germany. Indeed, looks like that's true. It's now being reported that he's seeing a specialist in Germany regarding his Achilles tendon. Certainly that's not great news that he can't get help here, but he's on the IR and not expected back anytime soon. National Football League has suspended defensive back Derwin James of the Chargers for 1 game. This is for his hit to Steelers tight end Pat Freiermuth. It's a violation of player safety. Basically, he's had some tough hits over and over and over again. Bad news for the Chiefs continues. Herbert trying to get healthy, not going to have his key left tackle. Joe Alt has a sprained MCL. He's going to miss this coming game against the Chiefs. Good thing Chargers are off to a 2-1 start. And no structural damage at all to Sam Darnold and that banged-up knee. Kevin O'Connell announced yesterday, expected to play and start. He'll be on the injury report in some kind, but they do play the Packers in week 4. 4th team in a 7-year career. Darnold's having the best start to his career, that's for sure. All right, Texas has an SEC showdown with Mississippi State this coming week. Quinn Ewers is questionable for the game, so that could mean Arch Manning ends up playing. But based on what we saw from Mississippi State last week, you will not be surprised to hear that the Longhorns are 38.5-point favorites over Mississippi State this week. They lost to the Gators. Michael Hawkins Jr. is going to start a quarterback for Oklahoma. They've seen enough of Jackson Arnold. He did not play well against Tennessee. Kirby Smart is hopeful that Michael Williams can play against Alabama. He's one of the top NFL draft prospects on the defensive line, all-team SEC, second team. And also the Mountain West is trying to keep their remaining schools, speaking of which, UNLV and Air Force trying to pay them off to keep them in the conference. Remains to be seen if they'll get that done with all this realignment. Celebration was on last night for the Philadelphia Phillies in the clubhouse. They win the National League East. They're a couple of wins away from clinching a first-round bye. They and the Dodgers look like the team that are going to get that done. 6-2 the final. Schwarber, 37th home run. Mariners beat the Astros. They're still alive in the race for the AL West. 4 games back of the division, a game and a half back of the wild card. Tonight, the Orioles take on the Yankees. The Mets go to Atlanta. If the Mets win 2 out of 3 in this series, they clinch. Padres and Dodgers start the series, and a great career for Charlie Blackmon is going to come to an end. He has decided to retire at the age of 38. Great player on the Colorado Rockies for more than a decade. WNBA tonight, playoffs, we could potentially get a sweep. New York Liberty, 12.5-point favorites over the Atlanta Dream. If they win, they move on. Las Vegas Aces also 7.5-point favorites over Seattle Storm. Vegas wins tonight. They move on as well. NBA news, Mitchell Robinson's going to miss the beginning of the season. He's out until December. He's going to have surgery and could potentially come back sometime in December or January. The Knicks are not big in the middle, so they'll have to figure that out. And also the Colorado Avalanche have signed Logan O'Connor to a 6-year extension. For those of you who are big hockey fans, I get you. And guess what? Preseason games getting underway. In fact, this weekend, plenty of games in the National Hockey League on the preseason ice. All right, that'll do it for this segment. Let's take a quick time out here on the show. Coming up next, it's time to recap what happened in college football over this past weekend. It looks like the Volunteers are legit. They go into Oklahoma and they win. Also, the Michigan Wolverines pull out a big win. But maybe the biggest surprise in all of college football, BYU at home pulling off an upset. Can they continue to maintain their great play and jump into the picture for the college football playoff? We'll answer all those questions and a whole lot more coming up next. Bill Bender from Sporting News on this edition of NewsWire. Don't go away.
It's a new era in CFB to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week-to-week-to-week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoff.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards. That was thinking! But he had that program was already going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
Crew has already clinched the National League Central. They're 2 games behind LA, that being the Dodgers, trying to maybe get the 2nd seed in the National League standings for October.
Both of these teams have a chance to score some runs against these pitching matchups, so maybe another over, even though we do have a playoff atmosphere. And yes, Milwaukee did clinch, but there's still an eye on the prize of we might be able to chase down the Dodgers and also the Phillies to get one of those buys.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Brian Daboll has been feeling it. He's in a foul mood. He's having stare-downs with Pat Leonard and everything else.
John Mara wants Brian Daboll to go and get the next quarterback. They tried to get the next quarterback. We all watched it on Hard Knocks. They couldn't end up with Daniels. They couldn't end up with May. So they said, okay, we'll run it back a year. We'll go get Neighbors, and we'll tolerate.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
This would have been a bet that I would have lost big on in terms of betting on Trevor Lawrence thus far. Because, Vinny, I thought he was an absolute rock-solid, can't-miss first overall pick.
They're underachieving a bit. I mean, I don't think this is the best adjustment team with Doug Peterson. He's not the best adjuster. If everything's kind of falling into place and everyone's executing well and he can just do what they want to do.
NewsWire. Only on SportsGrid.
Bill Bender is joining us today to recap what we saw in college football. I know those of you who are watching are like, tell us who's going to win the Alabama-Georgia game. We're going to do that later in the week. Bill and I will share our opinions on that. But Bill joins me now. And let's get into it, Bill, right here from the start. I mean, the Sooners played so poorly. They've already announced a quarterback change going into the week. You know, when we talked about this earlier in last week, the line did seem funny to me. And that's why, to me, something was strange with that game. And now I understand why. You know, Tennessee is really good, especially good on defense. And Oklahoma very clearly, Bill, was overrated going into that game. I mean, a good job by them jumping into the top 25. Good job by them winning the first couple of games of the season. But I do not think we're going to see the Sooners sniff the playoff this year.
Right. I'm trying to figure out who this game was more about, to your point. Tennessee, obviously, they can win with defense. That was one of the bigger stories for me is Nico Iamaleava is a young quarterback. The running game wasn't working. So they protected him with an aggressive defense that really didn't allow Oklahoma to do anything until late in the game when Michael Hawkins came in the game. And that's the other end of this is how is Oklahoma going to manage benching a five-star quarterback? If you look at the five-star quarterbacks from the class of 2023, Nico, Jackson Arnold, Arch Manning's a backup. You have two other kids that transfer. I mean, Craig, I would assume that Jackson Arnold, unless they give him a reset and another chance, at the end of the year, he's going to think about transferring. I don't know where the Sooners go from here. Their schedule's really tough, almost as tough as Florida's. So I'm with you. I think they're probably a team that probably pencil out of the playoff.
Yeah, going to play Texas too, and yeah, I mean, right down the line, I don't see them. They're probably going to be a big underdog in that game. Good point by Arnold too, and not maybe. I think he's gone for sure at the end. I mean, some team's going to pay him a lot to leave. All right. Well, meanwhile, Blake Corum of the Rams, who didn't register a snap. I watched that game last week for the Rams. Great win for them. He had to be watching this game thinking, yeah, this, maybe I could go back to Michigan and get one of these carries. 46 rushing attempts, Bill, for the Wolverines, 290 yards in that crazy ending against USC. So, I mean, give credit to that team for bouncing back and certainly recognizing that they have to do certain things in order to win this year. I think that recipe, whether it wins or loses, Bill, this is going to be what they're going to try to do the rest of the season.
And it's going to be entertaining because that game was I don't know if it was a good football game. It was a highly entertaining football game when you have that few passing yards and are still able to win. I think it says that Khalil Mullings, who averages 8.1 yards per carry, is one of the best running backs in the country. They're going to use him like they used Hassan Haskins a few years ago. I think they can get to 8 or 9 wins. And I don't think this is the indictment on USC that it should be. They gave up 3 running plays, cost them the game. I thought they played well otherwise. I thought Miller Moss handled being on the road in a Big Ten environment through 3 touchdowns. And if you look at their schedule, they play Penn State at home. They have they have Washington on the road. That's probably their toughest road game. And then outside of that, it's not too bad. I think USC is a team that absolutely can get back in the playoff mix. And then, of course, they play Notre Dame at the end of the regular season. So I'm still okay with the Trojans, despite they've got to be kicking themselves the way that they lost the game.
Yeah, and a close game, too. The committee looks at that. All right, so here's a shock. Unranked home team beats ranked road team. I mean, we talked about this, Bill. Tale as old as time. I mean, it doesn't happen every time, but it happens a lot. BYU beats Kansas State. Didn't see this coming. I think all prognosticators had Kansas State winning in this game pretty easily, but BYU is now 4-0 on the season. They have their signature win. A one-loss BYU team, Bill, I mean, that's going to be a 10 or 11 or 12 playoff seed this year.
Yeah, Kansas State, one of 2 teams I think I was on here raving about last week, about their chances to win the Big 12 and how physical they were. But what happened in that game is you remember that you're dealing with college kids. They had back-to-back turnovers late in the first half. BYU cashes both of them in for touchdowns, and it was game over. You could see it in their faces. I said, well, this one's over. BYU's winning with defense, winning with a old formula. The top 3 teams in the Big 12 right now, strangely, Iowa State, Utah, BYU, they're boring. They win with defense. They're probably not all that thrilling to watch on TV, but I wouldn't be surprised if 2 of those teams are playing for the Big 12 championship at the end of the year. And the Cougars are absolutely in that mix. Little surprised they're an underdog at Baylor this week, but that's that home road thing you're talking about.
Yeah. And usually you want to fade that team like BYU coming off that win. Okay, so Bill, living in South Florida, they've started the campaign for Heisman Trophy Award to Cam Ward, and probably for good reason. I mean, I'll be honest, that game last week against South Florida really convinced me that he's got to be in the mix for this thing at the end. And I think that it's probably fair to say, Bill, that if you're looking for a Heisman Trophy Award winner, maybe at the beginning of season, it would be Quinn Ewers. He's missed some time. Back on Georgia, hasn't looked so good. So still, I think a wide open race, but I think for me right now, is Cam Ward, you think, the favorite to win the Heisman? Again, long way to go.
Right, and this is the final week before we can crown a September Heisman winner. And he will be that. He's had a fantastic first month, but how many times has the guy in September been the guy at the end of the year? Jalen Milroe can make a statement this weekend against Georgia in that game that we'll talk about later on Friday. And Travis Hunter's played like every single snap and is making so many plays that I think he's impossible to ignore in the race. But right now, if Cam Ward leads Miami back to the college football playoff or back to some sort of national championship shot and keeps throwing for more than 300 yards every week, and they keep dominating opponents like they are in the second half, he's going to be the Heisman winner. He'll at least be in New York, so he's a very good bet right now.
Yeah, it's actually, I think now that you mention it, a better bet, it would be like that sort of trifecta, because you mentioned Hunter, because of the fact that he plays two offense and defense. I mean, he may not win it, but I think he's going to end up in the final three, like almost no matter what. And so that's another very interesting name to bring up. So good job by you, Bill, on that. All right, make sure we give us a good one, Bill, coming up later this week. Right now, Georgia 2-point favorites over Alabama. We'll talk again later in the week and break it down. Thanks again.
I can't wait. Thanks so much for having me on today.
All right, Bill Bender with us from Sporting News. Really good call there. I do think that a quarterback is going to win the Heisman, but if you can look at some options to take Hunter to finish second or third, not to win, I kind of like that. All right, coming up next, Mac Brown. This is probably the end of the line for him at North Carolina. Maybe not this week. End of the line soon. We'll hear from him next.
It's a new era in CFB to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of a week-to-week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoff.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards. That was thinking! But he had that program was already going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
Brew Crew has already clinched the National League Central. They're 2 games behind LA, that being the Dodgers, trying to maybe get the second seed in the National League standings for October.
Both of these teams have a chance to score some runs against these pitching matchups, so maybe another over, even though we do have a playoff atmosphere. And yes, Milwaukee did clinch, but there's still an eye on the prize of we might be able to chase down the Dodgers and also the Phillies to get one of those buys.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Brian Dable has been feeling it. He's in a foul mood. He's having stare downs with Pat Leonard and everything else.
John Mara wants Brian Dable to go and get the next quarterback. They tried to get the next quarterback. We all watched it on Hard Knocks. They couldn't end up with Daniels. They couldn't end up with May. So they said, okay, we'll run it back a year. We'll go get Neighbors, and we'll tolerate.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
This would have been a bet that I would have lost big on in terms of betting on Trevor Lawrence thus far. Because, Vinny, I thought he was an absolute rock-solid, can't-miss first overall pick.
They're underachieving a bit. I mean, I don't think this is the best adjustment team with Doug Peterson. He's not the best adjuster. If everything's kind of falling into place and everyone's executing well and he can just do what they want to do.
NewsWire. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We're going to hear from a couple of head coaches and a very excited SportsGrid host last night. What happened with Joe Lisi? I was watching on SportsGrid Live last night. I think Joe won a big bet on McLaurin or something like that. Someone's going to have to fill me in on that. Anyway, time now for the SportsGrid sound off. All right, Mac Brown, I don't know if he's in the College Football Hall of Fame, but he should be. He's a great college football coach and a legendary coach, without a doubt. He did it at a very high level. University of Texas won a national championship, of course, with Vince Young. Then went to North Carolina, has had some mixed results, some success, some failure as well, as every coach does in the history of college football. But Saturday in particular was the low point. UNC gave up 70 points to James Madison. 70-50. Is that right? 70-50 was the final in that game. You may have heard what Mac Brown said afterward. He asked the players if he should still be coaching. Should he still be leading them? Should he potentially retire? He walked all that back, saying he never should have said it. He let the emotions get the very best of him. But certainly talking after this game, Mac Brown earlier this week saying not the best look for him and the team.
We made entirely too many mistakes during the ball game. So as I was walking off the field, I thought, I'm responsible for all this. It's on me. So I should ask the players about leadership, if they feel good about me moving forward. And that's something I shouldn't do. I shouldn't put that pressure on those young people at that point. And I'm supposed to be a leader, and probably the worst things I've ever said in my life are after losses. You all have heard most of them. And that's just what I do. So disappointed in me. I should have waited, but the kids were overwhelmingly, come on, coach, let's go. Let's move forward. And we're doing that, and excited about the future, and love my job and love these kids. I love this place, and that's why I hate losing so much. And didn't really think that much about it after we did it, and moving forward and looking forward to playing Duke this weekend. But I'm supposed to be a role model for these kids. I'm supposed to take negatives and turn them into positives. You're supposed to learn from losses. I didn't do that very well on Saturday night.
Still give a lot of credit to Mac Brown. I mean, look, hard to indict him for one mistake or two mistakes. Still a legendary coach, but giving up 70 to James Madison, I think we know what the end of the season is going to look like here for the Tar Heels. All right, what will the end of the season look like for the Philadelphia Eagles? Without a doubt, the most bizarre play calls have come from the Eagles this season. Going for it on fourth down, not going for it, kicking field goals, missing fourth down. I mean, the Eagles have had the run of it through the first three games of the season. Nick Sirianni, their head coach, yesterday talking about the key decisions in the games and how he comes up with them.
Yeah, every time we go for it on fourth down or set ourselves up to go for it on fourth down, I'm doing what I think is best for the football team at that particular time. I'm not going to get into. I know I tried to share with you guys as much as I could last week. I don't think I'm not going to make that a weekly habit of explaining that to you guys. Like I said, I did that last week. I say this, every time I do something like that, I'm doing it because I think it gives us the best chance to win the football game. And knowing very well that when you don't convert on fourth down, what's going to happen is when you don't convert on fourth down, that's going to be 100% on me.
And that's basically the way that it works in the NFL. You make the right choice, you make the wrong choice. Joe Lisi's made the right choice. Previewing the Illinois-Penn State game should be a good one.
Huge Big Ten battle taking place in Happy Valley this coming Saturday between top-ranked Penn State and the undefeated Fighting Illini of Illinois. Right now, Illinois is hitting on all cylinders. They went in last Friday night to Lincoln, Nebraska, and struck the outright upset in overtime against Matt Rule and the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Their starting quarterback, Luke Altmaier, had a fantastic night, completing 77% of his passes, over 200 yards with 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. He's going to need that type of effort this coming Saturday in Beaver Stadium to strike the upset. On the flip side, Drew Aller's having a fantastic year as well. He's completing 70% of his passes, over 700 yards with 8 touchdowns and 1 interception. But Penn State can also run the football with Singleton and Allen. They're starting running backs. They can ground and pound and also work off of play action. This is shaping up to be a dynamic Big Ten battle. Early on, I like the points with Illinois. Now, Craig, back to you.
All right. Thanks very much, Joe. Coming up next, Sam McQuillan is going to join us from Legal Sports Report. By the way, those of you, following college football, especially on Saturday and on Friday from the west coast of Florida, evacuations have been listed for the tropical storm Helene. We'll have more on that tomorrow. Be right back.
It's a new era in CFB to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoff.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards. That was thinking! But he had that program was already going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
Brew Crew has already clinched the National League Central. They're 2 games behind LA. That being the Dodgers, trying to maybe get the 2nd seed in the National League standings for October.
Both of these teams have a chance to score some runs against these pitching matchups, so maybe another over, even though we do have a playoff atmosphere. And yes, Milwaukee did clinch, but there's still an eye on the prize of we might be able to chase down the Dodgers and also the Phillies to get one of those buys.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Brian Dable has been feeling it. He's in a foul mood. He's having stare-downs with Pat Leonard and everything else.
John Mara wants Brian Dable to go and get the next quarterback. They tried to get the next quarterback. We all watched it on Hard Knocks. They couldn't end up with Daniels. They couldn't end up with May. So they said, okay, we'll run it back a year. We'll go get neighbors, and we'll tolerate.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
This would have been a bet that I would have lost big on in terms of betting on Trevor Lawrence thus far. Because, Vinny, I thought he was an absolute rock-solid, can't-miss first overall pick.
They're underachieving a bit. I mean, I don't think this is the best adjustment team with Doug Peterson. He's not the best adjuster. If everything's kind of falling into place and everyone's executing well and he can just do what they want to do.
NewsWire. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We've got Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report in the house. We'll go over the very latest in the National Football League point spreads and also dive into some micro betting news. But first, let's bring Sam in. Yesterday, we found out the news we saw on social media. I saw, and I know that you guys wrote about this in Legal Sports Report. ESPN Bet is headed to New York. So, Sam, thanks for coming on the show. Once again, tell us more.
Yeah, absolutely, Craig. Always a pleasure. So yesterday, ESPN Bet was approved to launch in New York, which is going to happen within the coming days, according to Executive Vice President Chris Rogers of Penn, who testified before the New York State Gaming Commission yesterday. Essentially, the Gaming Commission had to approve a transfer of the license that WynnBET has and has had since 2022 when the state launched to Penn and to ESPN Bet in order to get everything squared away. They bought this license back in February and had been pretty vocal about wanting to launch in New York before football season started. Obviously, we are now in the middle of football season. They've missed about the first 4 weeks of NFL. They might soft launch before this weekend, according to Rogers. So that would mean they would probably end up missing most of week 4 as well if they're not fully launched by then. Pretty interesting that they say they still have to check a couple boxes before they launch, because about a month ago when CEO Jay Snowden was addressing investors, talking about New York, talking about how great it was going to be, he was saying that, once we're approved, we'll be able to go live the next day. So sort of a strange delay that happened in New York. Now, often the commission does drag their feet on a lot of issues and just doesn't get around to things. I don't think they felt a particular sense of urgency on their end because they already have a ton of operators in New York. Penn obviously probably felt a lot more urgency. I'm told they started submitting their paperwork in early May and it ended in August, even though there was no deadline. So they'll get up and running eventually. We'll have to keep monitoring ESPN. And when they do, we're probably going to have some different promos than we've seen in the past. They launched in 17 states at once in the middle of last NFL season, which led to a ton of downloads, a ton of people using them. But that's also because they were a new sports book for many people and people were using the free promos. Jay Snowden has been vocal about not doing the same thing in New York, which obviously is a much more expensive state to do business with a 51% tax rate. So we'll see how they lean into ESPN's branding power, into their audience once they do eventually launch in New York. And it comes at a critical time when many investors are calling for a sale of the company amid their slow sports betting gains. So New York should be a really big key piece in trying to gain some share on the DraftKings and FanDuels of the world, which hold about 47 to 35% of the market in New York.
Yeah, really big market share for those two companies. We'll see if ESPN Bet can even make a dent there. All right, making a dent in sports betting has been difficult for some people, Sam. If you're taking the favorites in the NFL, you're getting crushed. And if you're taking overs, you're probably even doing worse. So the totals are right now, a lot of them in the NFL are well under 40 for September, which is highly unusual. And any team that's 6 or 7 point underdogs pretty much, Sam, in the NFL, I mean, they're almost all winning and winning outright. So this has been a crazy season for the odds makers, and that's why I think a lot of these lines, as you see this week, are 3 and 4 and close.
Yeah, it's kind of been the same story over the last few weeks. You have these big favorites of minus 5.5 or more are now 2 and 14 to start the season against the spread, including losing 10 outright games. You had the Bengals, the 49ers, the Bucks, the Raiders, all had over 70% of the public bets this week, and each lost outright, which obviously knocks out a bunch of survivor pools. But even more notable, bettors often add favorites to parlays or teasers, tease it down so you're not doing the actual spread, you're just taking them to win outright. And sportsbooks are really cleaning up on those as well. They're holding about 21% on spreads to start the season, which is just insane considering the average is usually about 7.5%. And even more notable when you account for parlays, sportsbooks are holding 16% across all sorts of NFL bets. And yeah, scoring is down. We thought to start the season, odds makers theorized that perhaps with the new kickoff rules, teams were going to be scoring more. They would be closer to the end zones, but teams are just averaging 21 points per game through the first 4 weeks, which is the 5th straight year of scoring going down and the lowest start since 2006. So yeah, the public loves to bet overs and is not doing a great job right now. Unders are hitting at about a 58% rate this year. So between all the upsets, between the favorites losing outright and between the low scoring, again, sportsbooks are really cleaning up. And we'll have to see if that changes. There's only a couple big favorites this week. We'll see if those lines go down a bit as people start to look into this stuff, as the trends start to go out on social media. But it'll also be really interesting to see what happens, what the sportsbooks do with the money. Some analysts think the high margin start is going to result in sportsbooks, reinvesting that in promos, marketing, and trying to get people to bet more and more. They've actually only spent $23 million on linear TV ads this year, which is down 15% from last year. So they're saving money in that department while betting in general is going up. I think it's up about 16% in terms of handle this year, which obviously accounts for some new states as well. And viewership is up as well. So it's a really just a great mix all around for sports books to start the year. But obviously it's a very long season. We'll have to see what happens. Every stock is pretty much up right now and getting an outperform rating. But historically, that's kind of dipped as we go into November. So it'll be interesting to see how they react and what they do to prepare going forward.
Yeah, it's really hard to determine. Every season is different. A lot of the analysts say that teams are just playing no-break defense, just putting, defenders all the way back in the defensive end. So then, therefore, teams can't throw deep, and we just really haven't seen a lot of breakout plays in the NFL this season. Maybe that's part of it. All right, let's talk a little micro betting now. This is really interesting, Sam, as we close this out, because if there was ever a sport that had these lulls in play, it's definitely tennis, where the latency time could really give you an opportunity to use micro betting to your advantage, or at least be able to bet that way on each individual serve or hit, volley, etc. Tell us more about micro betting and how it could affect the sport.
Yeah, you make a great point hitting on latency, basically allowing people to have the time to bet on what's going to happen next. If the sport is going 100 miles per hour, there's no stops, it's really hard for people to get in and get into these markets. But because tennis has all these stops and starts, it's been kind of the perfect model to really get micro betting and live betting off to a great start in the US. I think it counts for something to 80 to 90% of handle, depending on the market, is on micro betting, on live betting markets. So you see companies like Sport Radar now making deals where they're going to have new micro betting markets and more things to bet on during the game in tennis, which is going to start in October. You're going to be able to bet on next break point, next serve result, who will serve the next ace. other things like point outcomes, even what the stroke type is going to be, a forehand, a serve, return. So you're seeing micro betting really becoming popular, starting with tennis. And live betting in general has been a really big emphasis of sports books in the NFL as well, and in sports across the board. I'm sure they would love to take the success from tennis and turn it in there, but it kind of seems like they're starting off with what is just really fits well for this sport. DraftKings just bought a micro betting provider in Simple Bet. You have more and more promos and marketing around live betting and micro betting, and allowing people to bet more frequently, more often, more types of markets, which in turn, keeps their bankroll in the account. They can then spend it and keep betting it more and more. So it's really a huge emphasis, and tennis especially has been kind of where we've seen this.
All right. Well, Sam, great stuff as always. Thanks again for coming on NewsWire. We'll catch up with you again next week. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you, Craig.
All right. Coming up next, Houston Texans was a sleeper pick from a lot of the prognosticators to not just win the AFC, but maybe even win the Super Bowl. Has that opinion changed? We'll talk about that coming up as Cole Thompson is going to join us. He's the managing editor of the Texans Wire. You can also follow us on social media at SportsGrid TV, and download the SportsGrid app just by taking out your phone and scanning that QR code. Available for both iOS and Android. It is the SportsGrid app. It's absolutely free. News, notes, information, picks against the spread, videos as well. We'll be back after these quick messages with a preview of the Houston Texans upcoming week. They take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Don't go away.
It's a new era in CFB to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoff.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards. That was thinking! But he had that program was already going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
Crew has already clinched the National League Central. They're 2 games behind LA, that being the Dodgers, trying to maybe get the 2nd seed in the National League standings for October.
Both of these teams have a chance to score some runs against these pitching matchups, so maybe another over, even though we do have a playoff atmosphere. And yes, Milwaukee did clinch, but there's still an eye on the prize of we might be able to chase down the Dodgers and also the Phillies to get one of those buys.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Brian Dable has been feeling it. He's in a foul mood. He's having stare downs with Pat Leonard and everything else.
John Mara wants Brian Dable to go and get the next quarterback. They tried to get the next quarterback. We all watched it on Hard Knocks. They couldn't end up with Daniels. They couldn't end up with May. So they said, okay, we'll run it back a year. We'll go get Neighbors, and we'll tolerate.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
This would have been a bet that I would have lost big on in terms of betting on Trevor Lawrence thus far. Because, Vinny, I thought he was an absolute rock-solid, can't-miss first overall pick.
They're underachieving a bit. I mean, I don't think this is the best adjustment team with Doug Peterson. He's not the best adjuster. If everything's kind of falling into place and everyone's executing well and he can just do what they want to do.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire on SportsGrid. Going into the NFL season, one of the favorites to come out of, I would say not nowhere, but a sleeper pick potentially, fair to say, to win the Super Bowl, Houston Texans. Texans haven't looked all that good through 3 weeks, but maybe things get easier with their upcoming schedule. Let's bring in Cole Thompson. He's the managing editor of the Texans Wire. Cole, thanks again for coming on NewsWire. And look, certainly it's still very early in the season. There's no question that Houston is supremely talented. But they definitely have walked into a couple of buzzsaws early part of the season.
You would not be wrong on that one, Craig. And it's in the way they played on day with the 34 loss to the Minnesota Vikings. It's how they've looked offensively throughout their first two matchups. There was never really any clear separation on the explosive plays when you were playing against Indianapolis. Outside the big 28-yard touchdown catch to Nico Collins, there were struggles against Chicago. And then somehow you just watched as a Vikings team that still is just improving and showing that maybe they are better than advertised, was able to corral Houston into making critical mistakes. And it started with the very first play of the game. Cade Stover goes toe-to-toe with Jonathan Grenard, former Texans defensive end, and gets blown back, gets called for a holding penalty on a 17-yard pickup. And on the very next pass, Kamu Grugier-Hill comes away with an interception. You're set up in great field position. The defense does its job except for on third down, and Justin Jefferson's a freak, and we all know this. So it was pretty easy that they were setting the tone early in that matchup. I'm wondering what needs to change offensively for them to get back to what we know, because they went out this offseason. They added in a guy in Joe Mixon that they believe can be a super caliber running back well past the age of 29, signed a 3-year deal in the offseason worth $27 million. They trade for Stephon Diggs. And the big thing with Stephon Diggs is they only brought him in on a 1-year deal because they voided his last 3 years. So it does kind of feel like this is a team that is going all in for this season with a young quarterback on a rookie deal. Let's find a way to capitalize on making sure that we bring in the right personnel. And it just has not clicked with anyone. Nico Collins might lead the NFL in receiving yards, but I think over half his catches have come on explosive plays of 20-plus yards downfield. So if you take away that element, Houston's offense has been docile, to say the least.
Yeah, and again, the running game is going to be important, as you said, bringing Mixon in. Akers did score a touchdown this last week, but his line looked a lot like his previous lines with the Rams and the Vikings and some other teams. Not all that much. A handful of carries, a handful of yards. All right, so I guess if there is good news for Houston, it would be the upcoming schedule. As we take a look at it, they're going to be favored in 3 of these 5 games, Jacksonville, New England, and Indianapolis. And certainly you would think that they could potentially split between Buffalo and Green Bay. And so, Cole, if they ended up winning 4 of these next 5 games, everything we're talking about here is probably for nothing. But it's the NFL, so things can be upside down, and you just simply never know how it's going to shake out.
Yeah, Craig, I mean, they might be favored in those games, but they were favored in all 3 of their first matchups, and they're 0 for 3 against the spread right now. They have struggled to be able to capitalize and hold out opponents late in the fourth quarter, and they've really just been a little bit blessed going up against 2 young quarterbacks in the early stages, and Anthony Richardson, who was coming off of a torn shoulder surgery and missed over 8 months of work, and then Caleb Williams, who had only played 4 quarters of NFL action at that point. And Sam Darnold, whether or not you think that he is a resurgent player that now has been blessed by not having to live in Carolina, that's one thing. But Trevor Lawrence, as bad as he's looked, he's also been able to cook the Texans on multiple occasions. When you look at the New England Patriots, they have an ideology about what style of football they want to play against a Texans team because they kind of know the backing underneath Nick Caserio. You don't know what version you're going to get in the Green Bay Packers, but that game has a major home field advantage for them at Lambeau. And so Buffalo's the one matchup where I think that you truly will define what Houston can be. We heard the comments last night made by Josh Allen about Stephon Diggs. We know that that's going to be a very emotional game for what has been a very quality number 2 receiver in this offense. And I do feel like their defense is going to be tested the most in that matchup. So I'll be really intrigued to see what version we're going to get of Houston moving forward. But the offensive line has got to play better. They got to be more consistent on the ground game. They have to be able to capitalize on third down. And the penalties, Craig, they lead the NFL in penalties. And Laremy Tunsil, who's expected to be an all-pro tackle most years, leads all players with 10 penalties, and we're through 12 quarters of action.
Didn't know that. Tunsil's been great for Houston. All right, to win the AFC South, odds have really not shifted all that much. Houston is still a heavy favorite to win, minus 195 over on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Indy has creeped ahead of Jacksonville, and Tennessee is all the way behind, which is not much different since the beginning of the season. So I guess, Cole, Houston's sort of fortunate that they have played poorly, but the other teams haven't played all that great as well. I mean, hard to put your stake in Indianapolis right now, and Jacksonville and Tennessee don't look like they're going to be much of a contender. All right, we'll get back to Cole here in just a sec and see if we can get his audio back working. Either way, bottom line right now, Houston Texans minus 195 over on the FanDuel Sportsbook, followed by Indianapolis Colts at plus 460, Jacksonville plus 500 and Tennessee plus 1,300. That's where we stand there. All right, let's do this. Let's take a quick timeout here on NewsWire. When we come back next, we will take a look at everything happening in the National Football League. But first, let's give you the latest in that showdown last night between the Washington Commanders and Cincinnati Bengals. And in case you missed it last night, it was what they called last night, I think well said, a coming out party for Jaden Daniels, the Heisman Trophy Award winner. 38-33 the final, as Daniels threw a couple of different touchdown passes to Jamar Chase, one over the shoulder, which was absolutely incredible, also ended up rushing for a touchdown as well. And I know nobody wants to hear about this, and they don't want to hear about their fantasy teams, but imagine going into a game and having Jaden Daniels, having Terry McLaurin, and having Zach Moss, like I did, and still lose in that game. Deflating loss for me last night. Also deflating for the Jaguars, 47-10, the final. Buffalo Bills end up throttling Jacksonville yesterday. Josh Allen just went absolutely bananas, and Allen proving why he's the favorite right now to win the National Football League's most valuable player. Buffalo's been playing some great football, and the Jaguars have not. We'll see if Doug Peterson and company can get it going. They absolutely are going to need to beat the Texans this week to stay alive. Teams that go 0-3 almost never make the playoffs, and I believe if you're 0-4, you never make the playoffs. So one of those two things has got to break this week. Speaking of which, coming up next, the Jaguars had a tough time on the field, also a tough time off the field last night. Also, someone is interested in Josh Allen in a different way. We'll be more specific about that when we come back. It's time now for some last licks right after the break.
It's a new era in CFB to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoff.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards. That was thinking, but he had that program was already going there.
Only on SportsGrid.
Brew Crew has already clinched the National League. Said they're 2 games behind LA. That being the Dodgers, trying to maybe get the 2nd seed in the National League standings for October.
Both of these teams have a chance to score some runs against these pitching matchups, so maybe another over, even though we do have a playoff atmosphere. And yes, Milwaukee did clinch, but there's still an eye on the prize of we might be able to chase down the Dodgers and also the Phillies to get one of those buys.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Brian Dable has been feeling it. He's in a foul mood. He's having stare downs with Pat Leonard and everything else.
John Mara wants Brian Dable to go and get the next quarterback. They tried to get the next quarterback. We all watched it on Hard Knocks. They couldn't end up with Daniels. They couldn't end up with May. So they said, okay, we'll run it back a year. We'll go get Neighbors, and we'll tolerate.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
This would have been a bet that I would have lost big on in terms of betting on Trevor Lawrence thus far. Because, Vinny, I thought he was an absolute rock-solid, can't-miss first overall pick.
They're underachieving a bit. I mean, I don't think this is the best adjustment team with Doug Peterson. He's not the best adjuster. If everything's kind of falling into place and everyone's executing well and he can just do what they want to do.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire on SportsGrid. If you're a Jacksonville Jaguars fan, not a lot to cheer for, and the fans themselves have a lot less to cheer for than the players themselves this morning. I'm going to tell you about that in just a minute. Also, Josh Allen gets a proposal and another record broken for Shohei Ohtani. Time now for some last licks. All right, well, if it wasn't bad enough that the Jaguars lost last night to the Buffalo Bills 47-10, they also had some issues getting out of Buffalo. Wouldn't you know? Their plane had some technical issues. You know how that works. And the Jaguars did not fly out of Buffalo until approximately, if I'm not mistaken, around 1 o'clock in the morning last night. So a very dismal flight, a very dismal game. And look, the Jaguars a couple of years ago, they draft Trevor Lawrence and ETN, and, they sign Kirk and do a lot of good things on defense too. But none of those things have worked. And not only that, but Doug Peterson was asked last night about changing things up completely. And he said, we don't really need to. It kind of feels like this is it this week for Jacksonville. I know they play Houston and it's a game they're not going to be favored in, but who knows? The NFL has shown that you don't have to be favored to win. So maybe this is their win upcoming this week. Meanwhile, a big fan of Josh Allen showed up in Buffalo last night, and she had a message for Josh Allen as well. This has gone, as we would say, viral on social media. And you see that sign there, basically a proposal to Josh Allen. Look, I'm ready to marry you, and I'll even leave my husband. That's the sign there. How about that? So Josh Allen, popular not only with the ladies, but maybe even the married ladies as well. I was watching that sign when it was put up yesterday, and I couldn't help think, how in the world, let's just be honest here, how in the world did the husband allow this? I guess it's in some point he thought it was funny. But now your wife is all over national television. Your wife is now known forever as the one that had the sign at the game willing to leave you to marry Josh Allen. We know it's never going to happen. But is that cool? Is that fun for the rest of your life? Look, mommy, look at you. Okay, fair enough. Finally, Shohei Ohtani, another record broken for him. Here's the number, 653,000 cards. Remember I talked about this last week? I said it would be the biggest Topps Now card purchase of all time. I wasn't even remotely close. This is the most by far. So basically what this means is Ohtani, who drove in 10 runs and hit 3 home runs against Miami last week. Topps Now, what they do is in the moment they create a card. You can go online and buy it. And, it's $10-20. Either way, 653,000 people went to Topps' website just to purchase that variation card yesterday. There was a chance to get an autograph or different, color variations, this or that. I don't know if anybody got those yet. And apparently there's signed cards of his, which will be distributed at a later date. But needless to say, another record broken for Shohei Ohtani, who's now, by the way, pursuing 55 home runs and 55 stolen bases. And some people think maybe he gets to 60 by Sunday. I don't think so, but maybe 55. That could be a possibility as well. All right, that will do it for our show today. Don't forget, you can catch plenty of our programming throughout the day here on SportsGrid. Immediately after we're done, you can watch The Early Line with Joe Raderi, who is filling in today for Donnie, as well as Ben Stevens, and I have an appearance on there previewing tonight's Mets game versus the Atlanta Braves. That's followed by Scott Farrell at 3 o'clock Eastern, coast to coast. Game time decisions immediately after that, followed by in-game live game day and Sports Rage tonight with Gabe. Tonight's action is mostly Major League Baseball action, preseason hockey, and the WNBA playoffs. Those are the 3 things on the slate tonight. Also want to thank our guest contributors, Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report. Also thanks to our guest contributors, as always, from Sporting News. Today, Bill Bender was on the program, so thanks to him for coming on, as well as Cole Thompson, the managing editor of the Texans Wire. Also, thanks to our director, Luke, and our producer, of course, of this show, Frank. Later this week on the program, Roger Hoover, who does play-by-play for the Alabama Crimson Tide, will join us to preview that big game against Georgia. Also, Bill Bender will be back on the week previewing that as well. And throughout the week, we'll get you ready for the next NFL matchup, which is, by the way, take a deep breath, coming up Thursday night, Dallas Cowboys. Okay, great. And the New York Giants. That's the matchup then. So until then, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Make sure to keep it locked right here to SportsGrid and to NewsWire. And also don't forget, for those of you who are in the midst of the fantasy football season, I host Fantasy Sports Today every Saturday morning with George Kurtz from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern, and then Joe Pisapia and Matt Stryker Sunday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern to 10 a.m. Eastern. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. We'll see you back here, same time, same place, 11 a.m. Eastern, exclusively here on SportsGrid for our next edition of NewsWire. Have a great day, everyone. See you then.